Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Network podcast. Brought to you by PlayNFC.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Network. That's our new intro, done by Matt Harrison.
I was jamming pretty hard to that.
Pretty good. That was pretty good. I like that. I'm your host, Greg Ambrosius, of course. I'm joined by NFBC Hall of Famer Dave Potts and a music man himself, so that's why he did like that. Dave won the NFBC Main Event overall title in 2012. Dave, welcome to our show.
Thank you much. It's wonderful to be here. Wonderful to see you and the Packers helmet. I was telling you before, behind my fancy screen, we would have Bernie Kosar back there.
Well, it's actually a Packers helmet, but that's Clay Matthews' ass, just if you were wondering.
I was.
Yeah. So, okay, let's get the fun stuff right out of the way. All right. So you're officially listed. I looked you up today. I was looking at your history in the NFBC. You're listed as David Potts in our system. Now, yeah. I knew when my mom hollered Gregory John Ambrosius, I was in a lot of trouble. So I got to ask, when you signed up, were you trying to please your mom, or maybe Dave actually isn't your real name? What is the answer here?
I do believe that I go by Dave and people call me Dave, but I actually have a quite solid answer for why that is. When I signed up and thought, well, hey, I'm going to win hundreds of thousands of dollars from these people, I'm going to use the same legal name that's on my tax form. And so that's what I did.
So when we did pay you the grand prize, it was David Potts.
Like
right?
I didn't want to get a check and then take it to the bank and then look at my driver's license. I'm like, do you know Dave Potts? That's not you.
You were smart even way back then, my man.
And way back then, like it was still checks.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember that. Yes. That's how old I am. Yeah.
There you go. So good stuff. All right. So you are an NFBC Hall of Famer. You're known as one of the best season-long players in the industry. But you've also won $2 million DFS contests. You've become more of a DFS player, actually. Which game are you better at, DFS or season-long?
So the answer to that is actually I am better at whichever one at that given time I'm putting my effort into. Like that really is the honest answer. I'm good at both. I could be bad at both.
Yeah.
Like I have, the background and the history to be able to play either. And so at any given time, any given season, whichever one takes more of my effort, that's the one I'm better at.
Yeah. All right. So I want to talk a little bit about those $1 million DFS prizes, because the first one has a hell of a story and I want you to tell it. There was the FanDuel contest. I don't remember where everybody was in person, but I do remember it was the Colorado, I believe Cincinnati game at Coors Field that became the difference maker. You faded that game. Then someone had a water main break or something like that. And you ended up winning $1 million. Someone. So let's talk about that someone and talk about the water main break and how crazy that was anyways.
Yeah. So, I mean, even before that, there's like an NFBC history with how I got there. Like I'd played a little bit on FanDuel, just kind of here and there. It was kind of fun, but I didn't take it seriously. Mm-hmm. And then that year, 2014, FanDuel came to the NFBC drafts to promote that $1 million. Like that was kind of the year that they stepped up their game. And so, that's actually when I decided, okay, this is, $1 million the first, that is going to be worth my time. And it really did go back to that.
So you hadn't played DFS before they came to our NFBC event?
I had played a little bit, but not seriously. Like it was very much just, goof around here and there. It wasn't something I did seriously until then. So, but yeah, that first live final, like you mentioned, was just goofy nonsense. I mean, a lot of times goofy nonsense is what wins on any given day, but that was kind of above and beyond. It was a Coors Field game, so obviously most people were playing players in the Coors Field game.
Right.
It wasn't. I didn't like the game quite. I wasn't going to play it anyway. And then, like after the game was supposed to start, we had a bunch of TVs in the room. It was in Vegas at the Cosmopolitan.
Okay. And
they had a fancy room with those TVs, and the game was delayed, and then they would show the streets outside, and like just water was like flying up out of the streets and stuff, and then there started to be a rumbling like they might not play this game, and so that knocked out 60% of the field.
Wow.
So it was basically, instead of having to beat 100 people, I had to beat like 30 people,
Yeah.
which is turned out to be more doable.
And what you did, right? You won it.
Yes. That was a David Ortiz became my hero that night. 2 home runs.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. So then like a year later with the DraftKings, you started playing DraftKings, and you won $1 million prize in that one. Any stories with that one? I think you did talk about that when we were at Arizona Fall League one time. You stacked Yankees or something like that.
Yeah. I did not require shenanigans on that night.
Yeah, so you admitted you did the water main break.
Someone had shenanigans. So no, that one was, I forget who was pitching for the Braves that night, but it was someone who should not have been a major league pitcher. And so it was a very obvious, they play 5 Yankees and then figure out the rest, and get Clayton Kershaw. So get Kershaw, and the Yankees scored I think they scored 20, 21. They ended up going against a position player late in the game. It just went perfectly.
Wow. Wow.
So.
Wasn't there one guy that you were different than other people? Because a lot of people were stacking that game. I remember you saying in Arizona, I thought you had like one guy that was the difference, right?
Yeah. So I didn't play. That was some of you might remember Greg Bird was like the big first base prospect.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
yeah.
Bird was playing that day, and he was cheap for the Yankees, and I did not play him.
Okay.
So he kind of he was one of the only Yankees that didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was one Yankee that I had that maybe it was Chase Headley, I think.
Mm.
And that's how old these players are.
Hey, that's how old
Chase
we
Headley
are.
was good for a few days.
Greg Bird was good for a few days in the Arizona Fall League. He was the MVP of the Arizona Fall League.
That's Greg Bird is the reason why I don't draft children in the NFBC. Still, like he's just one of a billion shining examples.
Yes,
I still hope we have a post-hype sleeper Greg Bird come back.
Well, we're going to talk about kids like Jordan Walker a little later on, which you don't draft either. But
never heard of him.
All right, let's talk a little bit about that background there, because that's not your home background there. So you're making a living right now with rotogrinders.com. Certainly winning 2 DFS titles helped you an awful lot. But talk about what you do at rotogrinders.com, what you do every day during the baseball season to help people win in DFS.
Yeah, so my main thing that takes up most of my time in the season, I write a crazy long article every day, well, Monday through Friday, basically break down the slate, look at who's playing today, talk through the pitchers, with a DFS focus, like, salaries and how would you build a lineup. But
right.
It's fun too, just for general baseball knowledge. It's just, I'm digging into every player, watching the matchups, a lot of nonsense dad jokes in the article to keep it entertaining. I try to 6 months of every day, it can get pretty bland.
Yeah.
Fantasy sports content in general can get pretty bland. So I have fun with it. And then the reason I have the fancy background, this is Birmingham in the background. They couldn't get me an Auburn background because it was licensed. They would have had to pay like $4 million to Auburn.
Really?
I made up that number, but they were like, we can get you Birmingham for free.
Yeah.
So
is there a skyline in Auburn?
Sort of, but the skyline is more the university with like a couple of the buildings in the football stadium.
Yeah.
But I do a webcast most nights, which is why I have the fancy background.
All right.
Which I just set up today for you.
So what were you doing before this? I believe you were a folk singer, had a guitar and such like that. I mean, you've come a long ways from playing by yourself in restaurants or whatever and such to what you're doing now with Roto Grinders and doing this for a living. It's a great story. Tell people about it.
Yeah, it's kind of an unusual life, I guess. Never had a real job, whatever you consider to be a real job.
Yep.
I played music growing up, and I went to college for 1 year, and that was not really for me, as it turns out, Greg. I don't know if they wanted me there, but I didn't want me there.
It's not for everybody, that's for sure.
I hit the road with my guitar, playing like little coffee houses. For a couple of years, I lived at home and would just kind of go out for a couple weeks here and there and play as much as I could. And that was, a slow building process to get enough gigs, get known enough, put out CDs to where I could make a living doing that. Mm-hmm. And I did that for 15 years, driving around the country, playing folk festivals, little listening rooms, coffee shops, restaurants and bars, just everywhere. Played in 46 states, I believe.
Really? Wow. This
Just,
sounds like a Garth Brooks story. I mean, that's how Garth Brooks started.
yeah. A lot of people, who became sort of big names, it did start out the same
Yeah.
way, just playing these little venues.
Right.
And then some of us stopped playing little venues and play fantasy baseball. But Garth could have done that if he chose. He decided to go the other way.
Yep.
I respect him for it.
He's a baseball fan, so he could have gone that way. He took the easier route. You took the harder route, I actually think. So I do have to ask you a question from Sean Childs. He wants to know what comes next. Your next $1 million DFS win, winning the main event overall, or having a Billboard #1 folk song written by you.
Almost certainly none of those will happen in my lifetime.
What's
again.
next? Come on, he's asking what's next.
If one of those is going to happen again,
Yeah.
it would be another DFS win.
Okay. Ooh, even over the main event, huh? You think the main event will be very tough, huh?
Yes.
It is tough, no doubt. Okay, let's talk about you joining the NFBC, because you joined in 2010, which was our 7th season. Were you playing local leagues? You're on the road, it sounded like. What were you into with fantasy baseball back then?
Yeah, so the way I started fantasy baseball, when I live in Auburn, Alabama. When I moved to Auburn, it was 1999. In either 99 or 2000, some friends here just started a little league on like CBS Sports. So I joined that league and really just liked the numbers. Like, I kind of got crazy into it, and I dominated that league for like 3 years. And eventually they kicked me out. They're like, "We cannot play with you. I don't understand what you're doing." So I found some local leagues and started playing just like the public Yahoo and CBS Sports and ESPN leagues, all those.
Yeah.
And after about 7 or 8 years of playing, just like, the $100 leagues here and there, I saw an ad for NFBC in one of the magazines. And I thought, yeah, let's go, take this to the next level. And I remember, I don't know if you remember me calling you, but I called you because at one point you had a main event in Orlando.
Yeah,
right?
we did.
Right. And so I could have driven to that. So I called you and I said, I'm a folk singer and I want to play fantasy baseball with you. Are you going to have stuff in Orlando? And you said, you got to go to Vegas. You got to go to Vegas. And I was like, okay. And the weekend,
salesman.
Vegas was that year. Yeah, that's all you had to say. And I was in. You
Yeah.
are just that believable. I had a gig in Atlanta that Saturday night, that I had already booked. And so I flew out Friday and did an auction, 2 auctions.
Yeah, AL and NL.
Yeah. Didn't get to stay all weekend, and loved it. Obviously, that was when it was back at the Flamingo.
Yeah.
And so, from there, and you'll probably bring this up, but like the first year I played, I was terrible. I mean, I had no idea what was happening. It's definitely a learning curve.
I'm definitely going to bring that up. Don't worry.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I mean, I loved it. Like most people do. Like the first time you show up, whether you win or lose or otherwise, I don't know what the otherwise would be.
Yeah.
Like it's just great. So I was all in from there.
Yeah. So you joined us, like I said, in 2010. You've always just played fantasy baseball, and I know you're a Cleveland Browns fan, a big Cleveland Browns fan. You live in Auburn, Alabama. So I have to ask you, why don't you ever play fantasy football? I mean, fantasy football is so much bigger than baseball, although we love how big we are in baseball. Why haven't you ever played fantasy football?
Yeah, I have 2 very good answers. These are fantastic answers, and they're the real honest truth. The first one is, originally I didn't play because I saw how the people who are really into fantasy football flailed down the stretch in fantasy baseball, because it's the same. You can't prep and play well. Like I still to this day think Chad Schroeder would have probably beat me that one year if he didn't have 429 football teams that month. Like we were neck and neck. I'd rather just be doing the one thing. But now I do have time to do it. And the reason I don't play is because I am such a big Cleveland Browns fan that I'm not willing to play against my bias. Like I never want to have to root against my team. I'm not going to draft a Baltimore Raven, period. I care more about my team in football, which is not the case in baseball. I mean, people assume I'm just this crazy, huge baseball fan. I mean, sort of, I like it, but I like football way better than baseball.
Yeah, well, see, that's what I thought. And in fantasy football, you do set your heart aside because you actually don't cheer against your players on your team or whatever. You want them all to score. And your favorite team, the Browns, you want them to score 51 if you got guys on the other team.
Yeah.
So,
And so I truly despise that when you're watching your team
yeah,
and you've got a player, like if you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt scores,
yeah,
like you see it when it happens to people and they're like, you're mad at your
yeah,
own team for scoring. Like, I can't live with that. So I just don't
yeah.
even do it.
I don't know if you're mad, but you're like, couldn't you let my guys score? So, all right, Dusty's asking, he needs to know your favorite ice cream shop in Vegas.
So I don't go too far out of the way. Like I
Yeah,
don't have any fancy, weird local place nobody's heard of. I just go to Ben and Jerry's. So we don't have a Ben and Jerry's shop nearby here.
yeah.
So like, I mean, I eat it from the store, but it's different when it's fresh. So I go to Ben and Jerry's.
All right. So, all right, 2010. You started in 2009, excuse me, and then you came back in 2010. And I think we were at the Bellagio that year, or did we move the next year to the Bellagio?
I
But
think I did. I had 2 years at the Flamingo.
okay, so it was. I think 2010 was our last year at the Flamingo. But you really jumped in 2010. You took the ALNL. You did the Ultimate Auction League. You did a live double play. I mean, at that point, you weren't afraid of the competition. All of a sudden, you're in, and you're really in, right?
Yes, it was kind of like I've just had to see it and figure out, even though I was clearly not good right
Yeah.
away, like that first year, like it was obvious that I was going to do this. Like, I like this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure this out and put all the time in. And
Yeah.
when you put all the time in, all the work in, you want to do more leagues to make it pay off.
Yeah, definitely. Well, talk about that first year because you've admitted even when you won the title in 2012, which was like your third year, that first year is a learning experience. And even the second year is a learning experience. I mean, 15 team formats, I'm sure you hadn't played that before. Talk about the learning experience. And you can win in your first year, but it's a learning experience, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And you hear people talk about this, but like we spend so much time harping on the ADPs,
Hmm.
especially nowadays. Like there's 1,000 podcasts right now today talking about ADP this and this, and as soon as that first main event starts, those do not exist.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's hard to understand until you see it. And so I had a plan. I worked pretty hard to come up with a plan. I had like the 14th pick, and I knew who I was going to take my first two picks, and I got neither of them. And I didn't understand how it was happening.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, back in my day, the local leagues I was playing, and even the moderately competitive other online leagues, you could kind of just win by just taking the players that happen to be sitting there that makes the most sense. You
Yeah.
don't need to go too in depth. It's just like this guy's $8, this guy's $7. The $8 guy is better.
Yeah.
And what I found that first year is when you got to those later rounds, it's not that I didn't know who the players were. I didn't know why I was taking this guy instead of this guy. And I ended up with a whole bunch of really below average guys getting 200 innings. I had like a terrible, horrible pitching staff,
Uh-huh.
but it was the kind of pitching staff that in a local league, just like piling up wins and strikeouts, and nobody
Yeah.
else has good pitching either. And then I'll pick up the good guys.
Yeah.
Like I'll pick up the other people in season. Well, they were all gone in this. So it's kind of those two things. Like, okay, I need to totally redo my process of how I figure out who I'm taking in the later rounds.
Mhm.
And in the early rounds, I need to assume that I'm not getting the people that I think I'm getting.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. So your third year was 2011. That was our first year at the Bellagio. I think we had 11 leagues at one time in that big ballroom, which was fabulous. You finally had figured it out. You won your first main event league title. You finished 12th overall. You won a double play live. You had won one the year before, which is our 12-team format. So third year in, you're feeling a little more comfortable and you're actually going for the grand prize here, right?
Yeah, that third year, like it was sort of just a gradual step up those first 3 years. Like I clearly figured out, and I figured out the fab. Like that's another thing that
Yeah.
you have to get used to the way NFBC leagues do free agents. It's just a different sort of thing. So I had everything kind of worked out. through there, and I'd just gotten much better at the player analysis. And that was back when it was more relevant then than it is now to do player analysis, because there wasn't as much really good content. Like, you don't actually have to do any player analysis right now if you don't want to. Like,
the ADPs will help you. That's for sure.
But then, I spent a lot of time in the off season. And that was the time period of my life where I was like switching from music to fantasy baseball. So I had a lot of time. And when I was on the road, I would play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would sit in a hotel room and just for 3 days straight, just find these 18th round pitchers, and like for months, that's all I did.
Yeah. So 2012, your fourth year, you were the best of the best. You won another main event league title, and you won the main event overall title. I mean, did you ever imagine when you first got into this one that you would win the overall title? And what do you remember about that championship season? I don't remember the ending. Did it come right down to the end or not?
Yeah. So that was, Chad Schroeder and I were basically tied, right, with 4 or 5 days to go.
Wow, nice.
And it was pretty clear to see that I just needed a few steals. If I get a few steals, I'm going to win. And I found a little Everth Cabrera. Really, Miguel Cabrera is the reason I won that year more than anything. But Everth Cabrera, I would not have won without him either. But I mean, like, I still remember that draft pretty well and exactly how it went. Sometimes it just goes perfectly for you. It's not that if you were sitting one chair over, there's nothing you could do, but everything just fell where I needed it to. And as with anything, like, it takes a lot of random luck going your way. As far as, like, I don't think any of my hitters got injured all year. I don't remember it exactly now, but I feel like 12 of my 14 hitters that I drafted were pretty much just in there every day all year. That kind of thing. You can't really plan for that. That's just, you need things to go your way.
That's a key for sure. Did you ever think that you could win the overall? I mean, we all go into it thinking we can, but I mean, when it happens, do you go, holy shit, that really happened?
No, I really did not even consider. I wasn't even trying to win. I was trying to win the league.
Right.
And really, I still remember. So it was August 15th, August 20th, somewhere in there. Sean Childs called me and said, hey, you got a shot to win. I hope, like, go get it. I was like, what are you talking about? I hadn't even looked at the overall standings. I kind of understood they were a thing, but I was just watching the league.
Yeah.
And then I went and looked at them and I was like, I guess I could. I wasn't focused on it.
Yeah. Well, keep an eye on those overall standings. It can be plentiful for you. You can make some money. Yeah. I got to tell you something. I remember one thing about 2012. You entered a super that year. We were in a small room on the Bellagio. Because we had a lot of guys online, I remember. And you in that super league decided to do a crazy strategy where you dumped 2 categories. I don't know if it was wins and strikeouts or whatever. And there was one guy in the room who just was like, who the hell is this guy? He's screwing me up. You finished 3rd in that league. And again, you can dump 2 categories, punt 2 categories to win in a private league. But boy, I know the guy's name to this day. He was not happy, but he did not cash, but you did.
That was beautiful. I like that one as much as the main event overall. Yeah.
I know, right where you're sitting, you're up against the wall kind of over there, and he was just so mad at you. But sometimes you do different strategies, right, to win money.
I mean, how mad would he have been if he was in the platinum? And I mean, people do that. I mean,
absolutely.
Like the private leagues, the strategies are all over the place. And by now, I think people are used to it. But yeah, those first few years, you definitely got some yellers.
Yeah, absolutely. So very interesting. So let's talk about the year after you win the overall. I mean, there is some pressure into you. You come to the main event and everyone's hugging you and saying just good things to you and stuff. I think you finished 2nd in 2 main events that next year. You finished 25th and 64th. Again, solid. But I mean, now you realize how hard it is to win the overall, right? I mean, you want to win 2 in a row, of course, but holy cow, it's not easy. Even winning your league title is not easy in this 15-team format.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to what I said, like, really everything has to go your way. Like, there's not much, if any, difference between the top 100 NFBC players. Like, really, like, there's at least 100 people that could easily win. And it's just going to come down to, out of that group, like, who has, the players just fall to them just perfectly in the draft, who has some luck with the injuries, and do a lot of things right too.
Right.
But I mean, I'm certainly aware of that. I never expected to win again. The next time it's going to go all correct for somebody else.
Yeah.
But you put yourself in position, and I think that next year, if you're a couple teams in the top 100 overall, and you're still doing things right.
Yep.
Not really much difference in like playing well versus playing poorly to finish first versus 25th overall.
Yep, definitely. When I look at your history, you do have a lot of success in 12-team format. You won several online championship league titles. You finished second or third multiple times when we had the NFC Prime Time. Again, another contest that Chad kind of dominated. Do you like 12 versus 15? It's a different game, especially in Fab. There's more players available. Talk about the differences between 12 and 15.
Yeah, so I've had to give up 12, not because I don't like it, but it's more work
For the
because of
Fab,
how many
yeah.
players there are. Like,
Right.
you have to churn through players so much quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say I like 12 better for that reason. Like, if I was just going to play one league for fun, and I would probably play a 12, and I spend more time in Fab and do more moves.
Yeah.
But when I was playing a lot, I had a ton of 12-team leagues along with the 15-team leagues. And like to sort of do two whole different periods of Fab, like it's a totally different setup for 12s and 15s. Like I really did kind of drive myself crazy playing so many teams. I love the 12s, and I mean, no one's really ever asked me that. Which one do I like better?
Yeah,
I might like the small leagues better, where you can do more things in season. I like the draft better for a 15-teamer. But I think in season, I think I prefer having more options.
Yeah, I talked about this out at the Arizona Fall League when you're on the NFBC panel. When I look at championship rosters, and I do go through the national champion rosters, the top players are churning through players, 3, 4, at least 4 every week in Fab. I'm an old school guy, and I'm lazy as hell. I drafted him. I think he's going to finally bust out, so I hang on to him way too long. And conditional bids, I've said this before, Sean Johnson, who's going in our Hall of Fame this year, he had 34 conditional bids for one pickup, and he had 20 plus guys for majority of his pickups. Do you feel like the churning through players is an important aspect of this? Like, you can't hold on to a reserve too long. Give a guy a shot. If he doesn't have a good week, you churn through him and pick up somebody else the next week.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things. And that's one of the hardest differences from going from 12 to 15 and back and forth. Is like, what level of player, like there's players that you have to cut some really good players in 12-team leagues, especially. Right. But in 15s, that's still a weakness of mine too. Like, I don't want to cut anybody. Like I got that guy for a reason.
Yeah.
And you don't want to drop the guy and then someone else gets him and then he does what you thought he would do.
That's me.
That dumb fear.
Yeah.
Everyone knows you're supposed to simply play the game. If I was starting over today, which of these players do I want? And if I want the other guy, I'm supposed to cut him and bid on that guy. Yeah. It's easier said than done. And that's actually sort of why I draft exactly the way I draft, is knowing who I'm going to be willing to drop and who I'm not. Personally, I have a really hard time dropping hitters. Like, I'm going to try to draft the 14 hitters that are going to be in my roster the last day of the year is the first day.
Yeah.
And I actually, part of the reason I draft a bunch of nonsense relievers that I hope get some saves at the end is, yeah, sure, I want some saves, but I also want to have guys that I'm ready to cut. Like, if I don't draft some of those type players, like no matter how much I want someone the first week, like I won't cut anyone. I'm like, I have 30 players I like. What? Like, I actually very intentionally have a couple players on my roster that I know I'm going to cut. Which kind of sounds dumb, and maybe it is dumb. But you got to be willing to make some moves, and it's really easy to just sit here and say you should cut more players, but it's hard to do.
No, you said that in Arizona, that the 14 hitters you draft, those are the guys you want in your lineup for the year. And obviously they have to stay healthy, which is impossible a lot of times. But you're looking to churn pitchers more than you're looking to churn hitters, correct?
Yeah, that's the way I work best.
Mhm.
It's sort of my default setting. Like when I go and look at players on say, like that's what I'm looking at is what pitchers either have a 2-start week or who might become a closer or
Yeah.
what pitchers being called up. I don't know why it is. I don't know what my particular mental situation is, Greg. There's just something going on, but like I can't do it with hitters. Like on both sides, I can't cut my hitters. Like I'm
Mhm.
sure that this guy's good,
Yep.
even when he's clearly not. And I can't see why this other guy is going to be good. Like I'm not sure where this comes from. Like I am more than happy to take a minor league pitcher that gets called up.
Yeah.
But a minor league hitter that gets called up, unless it's the generational talent that I'm not going to win anyway. Like I just don't do it.
Hmm.
I probably should.
You
And I
probably should. Yeah. Very interesting. All right. One thing I'm going to say about you is you're not dull with your team names. There's no team pots on a single team that I could find. You name your teams Vandalay Industries, Low Talkers, No Soup for You. They all have a Seinfeld reference, don't they?
Yeah, I decided early on, like, I'm just going to I'm going to make team names that entertain myself. And, Low Talkers is like my main go-to
Yeah.
team name because I am a low talker. Like the first few years I showed up, nobody knew who I was. I don't walk around
Absolutely.
talking to people. I kind of keep to myself.
That's why I thought it was named Low Talkers, because you are so quiet.
It was that
Right.
that really is why that's kind of my main name for main event teams. And then when I started doing auctions, I was like, I need a different name. And Vandalay Industries was just a very obvious name for me. And then
It was, but
branched out
not
from
only
there.
that, there were multiple people who had Vandalay Industries, so you're not
Yeah.
alone there.
So that's why I had to switch. And Kramerica is in there, and I've had a lot. Puffy shirt, and when I had
assume
all
you're
when
a
I did like.
You're a Seinfeld fan, right?
Oh yeah, I still I watch the whole series. Basically, I'm always watching it somewhere.
Interesting. Hey, you talked in Arizona again, like we were talking about your process. You felt last year, even though you did not have a good year last year, your process was right. You were getting the players you wanted, but things just didn't work out with the players that you had. Had you gotten a different player here in round one than this guy, we all can say that. But talk about how you still felt like your process was good, but damn, the players you got just didn't perform last year.
Yeah. So the way I said it at that panel in Arizona, and I'm certain that this is true. Like we talk about strategies a lot. Like should I take closers early or 2 starters early, or take my
Right.
speed early, or go all power early? Any strategy works if you
Mhm.
get the players right. But it's more about sort of building it backwards and saying, I don't think you just say in a vacuum, oh, I'm not gonna get speed early, or
Mhm.
I'm gonna wait on saves. Like you should do that by saying, I see how I can get speed late.
Mhm.
Therefore, I'm not gonna take speed early.
Right.
But in the, you can take 2 aces, the old pocket aces. I don't know why we have to say pocket aces now. Double tap the starters, Greg.
Because we're all blackjack players, I guess. I don't know.
Yes, like you can take 2 pitchers in round 1 and 2, and if they are the 2 best pitchers in the league, you will probably win, assuming
Mhm.
the rest of the draft goes evenly. You take 2 pitchers and one of them gets hurt and one of them is mediocre, and that strategy was terrible.
Right.
Well, no, the strategy was exactly the same strategy. It's just which guys do you get? And I just think people spend way too much time trying to figure out what strategy they want based on the top of the draft. Like
Mhm.
the first 30, 40 players are all great.
Right.
If any of them stay healthy and have good years, like you win with any of those guys. Like
Yeah.
I think you need to think about it backwards and say, look what I can get late. I love all these starting pitchers late, so I don't need to go starting pitchers early. Or I can get all this. I know how to get my speed late. I'm not going to do that early, whatever. Like, but just the talking about the strategy is closers early, or the
Mhm.
strategy is speed early. No, like the strategy is get good players
Yeah.
throughout the draft and you win.
Right. And they stay healthy. That's the key.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you've won 5 main event league titles with us, 2011, 12, 16, 17, and 19. Now, we admit it's not easy to win a 15-team league title. Was it easier back in the earlier days? Is it harder now because there's so much information? I mean, it's kind of odd because more information doesn't make it easier, but you got to siphon through all that. Was there any difference in the 12, 13 years you've been playing with us?
Honestly, no.
Yeah.
I think the competition was equally difficult then as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same ratio of almost everybody's at least pretty good. Most people are really good in every league. Not every league. Most leagues, you're going to have 1 or 2 people who are kind of just there for fun and don't really know. But it's interesting with all the information out there. Like, that's where everything is so different. Like 10 years ago, there were maybe in February, you could find 3 podcasts
Right.
talking at NFBC, amongst other things. And now there's like 60 podcasts just about NFBC. But that doesn't really change anything about the leagues themselves. Like, it hasn't made them any harder or easier. It's just everyone has more information if they want it. But there's always been plenty of information. It's not about, can you find a podcast to listen to tell you how many second basemen there are? Like, we can all find how many second basemen there are. It's a more entertaining industry now, with a lot more people doing content, which
I
is great.
agree with you, because back in the old days, we all had the same magazine. So we all walked into the draft room with the same knowledge. We all had the forecaster, right? Okay, Ron projected these guys, so that's what we're going to. Now we're all got all kinds of different websites and content sites and podcasts and such. I mean, it is amazing. I was talking with Rob Silver. The number of NFBC dedicated podcasts is insane. And I think the ADPs have done that. It's gotten the content out there in October. We started drafts in October, and all of a sudden you had ADPs out there, and you could debate where this guy's going or where pitchers are going or the trends that we're seeing. And I love it. I mean, we used to hide the ADPs. We used to make you sign up, and then you got that. That was my way of saying, hey, these guys are generating the ADPs. You want it? Get in a league, damn it, know. But when we made it public, then everybody started using it. So,
and that's interesting in and of itself. Like, I think a lot of us kind of preferred it to be private.
Yeah, I know.
And yet, at the same time, like, especially all the online leagues have taken off because of it. So, I mean, it was definitely right to. Now everyone was talking about it. It's definitely a good thing.
Well, I can tell you, it was at the Arizona Fall League in 2018. Ron wanted to know if he could use our ADPs for his Babs site. And I said, absolutely, I'll get you a link to it or whatever. And I was sitting on the panel, and you were on it actually. And I was thinking, why the hell don't I just make this public for everybody? And I said right on that panel that we're going to make this public. Ron asked it. I think we're going to make it public. And it really was one of the better things that we did there. So I could have stopped it, guys. This is the message. I was on a panel with Greg when it just popped into his head that it's free for everybody now. I apologize. You were talking so much, you never even heard what I was saying there. You were just a blabbermouth up there. Believe
That's
it?
my thing. I apologize.
Low talkers, come on. Hey, let's talk about the game today. So we were just at West Palm Beach for Florida first pitch. Went to a ball game, and I have to tell you, I've seen the Arizona Fall League with the pitch clock. It just seemed like the game moved a little bit more out there. I'm in favor of the pitch clock. The game we went to, 6 innings, 90 minutes. There was 4-3 ball game. It was action. I mean, I couldn't believe that this is the same baseball I've been watching the last couple of years. Your thoughts on the rules changes and how it's going to affect baseball this year?
Yeah, I think no question it's better for spectators. Like, for just we all kind of like going to the ballpark, and if you sit there for 4 hours, you sit there for 4 hours, it's fun. But really, for multiple games a year or watching them on TV, like, they don't need to be that long. Right. And there is a crazy ton of nonsense downtime with I'm going to walk out of the box and go over here, and I'm going to throw over here 47 times. And if you can kind of let it go, like, it is dumb that it was like that. So I'm in favor. It'll be interesting. It will have some effect
Oh
in
yeah.
the fantasy world, obviously.
Yeah.
But as far as real baseball, like definitely, like yeah, let's make the game
Well, let's
more
talk about
entertaining.
what type of effect do you think? I want to start with the first one that no one's really talking about. It's throwing over to first base only twice. I think
That's
the
the
top
craziest one to me.
It's the craziest one, but you can see the veterans, they bait them to throw it over there twice, and on that third one, or they know it's got to go to the plate, they're gone, right? So I'm wondering if you're thinking the same way I am. I think a guy like Trey Turner or Acuna or Tim Anderson, these guys are going to get a lot more stolen bases than the other people. Other people might get one or two or three more, but I don't. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just think that rule in itself is going to help the top base stealers.
Yeah, Greg, for the first time, you are not wrong.
All right.
Um, so you finally got one. So yeah, what's crazy to me is last year when all the rule changes came out, everyone was talking about the pitch clock and the bases and the shift.
Mhm.
I didn't even hear anything about this thrower thing until recently, and I was like, "Wait, what?" Um, yeah,
It's huge.
the guys who are smart and want to play around, especially and adding the pitch clock on
Yeah.
makes it even harder. They don't have time to sit there and decide, do I want to make my second throw over right
Yep.
now? Like,
Yep.
I think the really good base stealers and the smart base stealers are going to go absolutely bananas.
I agree with you.
And I'm not on the train of thinking just everybody's going to steal more
No.
bases. I think the guys who steal bases are going to steal a lot. It'll be back. I mean, not everyone's going to steal 80. Like,
Right.
it's not Vince Coleman everywhere, but I think we're going to have a lot more people stealing 30.
No, I
40
totally
bases.
agree with you. I don't think the 10 guy goes to 20, and I don't think the 2 guy goes to 10.
Right.
But I
But the
do
30
think
goes to 50.
I think the 30 can go to 50, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I said I want Trey Turner, because I just think Trey Turner has the possibility to steal a lot of bases. What about the shift? I mean, that's the one everyone's talking about. Do you feel like an Anthony Rizzo or Corey Seager, obviously, that'll help their batting average. It has to help it a little bit, obviously. But any thoughts on the shift?
Yeah. Obviously, it can't possibly hurt a lot of players. But I feel like batting average is such a random thing to
Yeah.
begin with. Like, you can't pick between 260 and 280. Even if you say, well, this guy's going to get, 5% more hits because of this. Like,
Yeah.
it's still like the difference between even 240 and 290 is complete random nonsense. Like, it really is. There's like a handful of guys that are definitely good batting average and a handful that are definitely bad. But like 80% of the players, I don't even know why we talk about it. Like, to try to plan for it is silly,
Yeah. Yeah.
says me.
I mean, it's funny because some of these guys that they were shifting before I saw in spring training, they're bringing the center fielder into that area, and the left fielder now has to just cover that space, which makes sense because they don't think he's going to go that way. So I think you're going to see some shift, but it's going to be involved with the outfielders.
Yeah, that to me that made sense. Like, yeah, they can still.
Yeah.
They didn't say that the outfielders can't all stand in one little circle.
Right.
They'll figure it out. I don't think the shift is. I do think it's a big deal. I don't think it's as big a deal to figure something out going into the year as to how to do something about it for fantasy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And again, I think the throwing over to first base is the bigger one there. So let me ask you about the ADPs. So do you use the ADPs? I mean, like you say, you do a lot of research yourself. And how do you use those ADPs? I mean, you're a veteran, you're a guy who's won this thing, but yet you're still looking at those regularly as well, right?
Yeah, it's a strange sort of cat and mouse game where, like, when I like the past few years, I haven't done draft champions leagues. And
Shame
so
on
I
you.
kind of don't want to know because they really are different and they should be different.
Right.
Right. Like, and a lot of people are talking about how, Burns and Cole have been going like early second round. Well, that means nothing. They're going to go between 6 and 10 in the main events, just period. But you can't figure that out all the way down the line. Like, where are these off? And they'll start to come together as it's more live fab leagues. But even then, it's 12 teamers. So what I do with the ADPs, I do think it gives you essentially the ranking by position. Like, it's not like the 7th pitcher's going to become the 2nd all of a sudden. It's just that the whole group there moves up. The whole group of this position or this stat line moves up, and these guys get pushed down. So I do think, like, the ADP, the number is not that important to me but the second basemen are getting drafted in this order is very relevant. And that usually, unless something happens news-wise, that usually is pretty consistent.
Position by position is what you're saying.
Yeah.
That's what you look at.
So I am looking for basically like pockets of players, like where are all these type guys going together?
Right.
And who do I definitely like better than the field as far as,
Right.
Not a player at a number.
Right.
But I like the 15th second baseman is my fifth second baseman, period.
Right.
That's the guy I can plan on getting here.
Yeah.
I do like to have at some point in the draft, like I have some sort of strategy going in where it all sort of hinges on, I'm going to get this group of players, a couple of these guys in these rounds. And if that doesn't work out, then my whole draft is probably not going to work out, or I'm going to have to adjust on the fly. And that does come from ADP. But less like I say, less the overall number and more of how he compares to the other players at his position or at his.
So what are you looking at for KDS this year if you're looking at where your pockets that you want to get certain guys?
Yeah, so I still sort of KDS based on the first 4 rounds, not sort of completely. I do. Like once you get past, 5th round, like everything's kind of jumbled up where you're jumping pretty far ahead anyway. And you can't really plan for it. So I'm definitely going 1 through 5. I think I'm going to go 1 through 7 and then 15. Okay. Like to me, that middle of the first round, I don't want any of those guys more than I want the guy who's 15th.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting with Yordan Alvarez now with this hand injury. He's not even swinging the bat. He's really been dropping. I think he went like 18th and 19th last night in online championships.
That one bugs me so much. I love that guy so much. And something I said a lot last year, like I firmly believe he is the best hitter in baseball.
Yeah.
Period. Not the best fantasy player, but like the actual best hitter. I think that's him. But I'm nervous about it. I don't like it.
I mean, an injury that you had last year and you come into spring and it's still bothering you. That's not, I've often said on the radio, I don't want to draft already injured players. I know they're going to get hurt during the year, right? Everyone gets hurt during the year. So why the hell do I want to draft one who's already hurt? And I know he's hurt and I'm still going to draft him. But I mean, the upside on him is unbelievable.
He's great. But yeah, like the mixture of, you don't really want to draft a guy with no speed in the first round if you can help it, unless he's just a can't miss. Well, he's now not a can't miss because of that.
Yeah.
With no injury, he's a can't miss for me. I'd take him. I would be fine taking him first overall. I wouldn't, but I'd be okay with it.
Yeah.
But now, I don't want that kind of risk in the first round.
Yeah. I mean, Sean had always said if you get 75 homers, 75 stolen bases from your first 3 hitters, that's a winning combination. Now it's harder because they don't run as much, but do you subscribe to that? And when you do take a Yordan Alvarez, well, you're not going to get that 75-75 then.
No, I think that 75-75 sort of went out the window 6-7 years ago when the game sort of changed pretty drastically.
So Sean's not keeping up with the times is what you're saying?
Have you seen how old that guy is? No,
I just was with him. Yeah,
I know. I do not do the 75-75 thing anymore. I mean, it's great by all means. Like the point is, you want power and speed early.
Right.
Of course you do. Yes.
Right.
But I think it's more of the point is you need to know where you're getting your speed, and but actually getting 75 in the first 3 rounds,
that's tough.
It's pretty undoable now. I mean, if Trey Turner might steal 75, so you can do it this year. But no, I don't buy that malarkey.
Good one, Sean. Way to go. 2 Hall of Famers debating on this. We're going to talk a little bit of a few players here. I don't want to have you spill all your scouting reports and such, but I do want to talk about the camaraderie. Here we're talking about Sean. And like you said, when you came to the NFBC in 2009, you come to the Flamingo, you're a quiet guy, you kind of hang by yourself. Now, all of a sudden, there's just this camaraderie. You know everybody knows you, everybody's happy for your success and stuff. Can you just talk a little bit about what these live events mean? And I mean, last year we saw it. It was so great to get back together and see each other again for the first time in several years. And I think this year with our 20th anniversary with the parties on Friday and Saturday, I think it's going to be a real special time. Can you just kind of talk about the live events and what they mean to you?
Yeah. So for a guy like me who is, I really quiet, keep to myself, like you said, like the first couple of years, I was surprised how easy it was to talk to anyone. Like people would just come up and say hi, and it was like I felt comfortable.
Mhm.
But it wasn't but a few years in until I started like feeling like, these are my friends. And like, you talk to people throughout the year. And now it's like, I don't know, some of my best friends are NFBC people
Yeah.
you see once or twice a year. And it is because like it's such a unique little hobby. Like most people don't really understand this level of fantasy baseball. Like there's people in town that play fantasy baseball, but they don't
Right.
really get it. Like,
Right.
So there aren't many people anywhere that you have that kind of natural thing in common with.
Yeah.
And so I think it's pretty great. Like if you've never been to a live event, like a lot of people still haven't because there's so many online leagues. You can play online, even do the main event. Like treat it as a vacation too. Like they just allow yourself to have some fun in life.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
It's
absolutely.
fantastic.
Come to Vegas. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I've said you could see the trend where it's going online. Obviously, the percentage of leagues we have is more online, but man, we still got 8 main event leagues going on in the big ballroom, the grand ballroom that we're going to have at the Mirage on Saturday morning. That's going to be a fantastic sight to see. And the auctions that we have, $10,000 auction leagues, 5,000, 2,500. It's special. And I'm
Greg,
really looking.
what do we know about the food at the Mirage? What do we know about the food? Tell me the goods.
So you mean at our events, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know because they were an MGM
Right. That's
hotel, and
absolutely. Yeah.
they just switched now to Hard Rock. So may have a lot of alcohol in a lot of our meals. I'm not
We're
quite
gonna have
sure.
like live bands now at the thing,
I
Hard Rock.
don't. No, they don't. Not at this point.
Okay.
They're going to renovate in 2025. They have the F1 on the strip, so none of the hotels are allowed to renovate while the F1 is there. And
Interesting.
so, yeah, I mean, I was there in November. It's still a nice hotel, very nice sports book and stuff. Got a lot of little hotel or restaurants all around that area. So a lot of
So
different.
at this point in time, it's going to look the same as it always has. Like they
It's going to
haven't
look
done
the
anything
same
to
as
it.
it always has. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. 25 is when they're going to start making some changes to it. So,
Well, I don't know what it's going to taste like. I hope you get me some little steaks at some point, Greg.
oh, I got a steak at some
Okay.
point planned. Don't worry about it. It's going to
All
be
right.
good. So, hey, talking about that first round, any players you want to drop that either is a landmine? We talked about your Don Alvarez or early on that, boy, not to give away, but boy, I would like to see this guy land to me or something like that. Again, not trying to steal anybody, but any interesting players that you're really having a hard time evaluating or someone you really like that you hope gets you.
Yeah. So it's really about like, so to me, like the top 7 is
Hmm.
so obvious and kind of separated.
Hmm.
And I don't disagree with all. Like, I have nothing to say about
Yeah.
top 7. That's including Tucker and Otani after the top 5. Like, I think that's just kind of who it is. And then I think Burns and Cole become the next 2 guys at the main event. Like, I think you have 9 players that everyone's good with and fine with, and I don't have any reason not to love all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
After that, where it gets tricky, like that's where you could have an answer to this question. And I don't want, like, I'm nervous about Alvarez, like we said. I don't really want Juan Soto.
Hmm.
I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like I feel like he wants to be air quotes peak Joey Votto, which
Yeah.
is to say, like, really just so
Walk.
much better in real life. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
sure this is what we need for fantasy.
Yeah.
People that know me know I'm not going to feel great about a child in the top 10. So Bobby Witt is out for me.
Hmm.
No chance I'm taking Tatis in the top 20, much less 30. As much as I like old people, I'm out on Mike Trout. Like, he's not old, but he is like, he's never going to play anything close to a full season ever. Just, I feel bad for the guy, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think who interests me kind of in that group is Bo Bichette.
Hmm.
I don't have any idea exactly what's going to happen with the steals, but like, he's one of those guys that I wouldn't be stunned. Like, he stole 13 bases last year.
Right.
He could steal 40, and I wouldn't
Right.
be even moderately surprised.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that I'll take as a first rounder and say, even if he's just kind of blah again, and it's 25 homers and 15 steals, that's not really that blah at all.
No.
So that's the kind of guy where I see a pretty good floor with very realistic upside.
Right.
And I'm on the train of Pete Alonso hits like 82 homers. I will take him.
I like the Bichette Alonso start. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, like that. That's the kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting with the pitchers. Like, I feel like it's such a huge group after Cole and Burns, pretty much. Like, I don't know, the next 15 guys are all about the same to me. I don't feel like I don't think I'm going to end up with a pitcher. If I'm drafting at the end of the first round, I doubt I'm going to get a pitcher there.
Yep. Hey, we got a question here. Can you give a hitter and a pitcher after round 20 any real late guys you're thinking about? Anything stand out?
So I'm the worst person for those kind of questions.
Me too.
Because like I'm taking the boring old, like my answer would be Charlie Blackmon. Like really, like, and that's not the answer people want. Like somebody wants me to say, I don't know. So who's going near Charlie Blackmon?
I don't know. I would have said Jordan Walker.
Edward Olivares.
Yeah, there you go.
I think is very real. He's definitely real. Like he exists.
Yeah, he's real. It's hard to tell because he's coming and going all the time.
Right. I'm in on him. And then I have a bunch of pitchers down there that I don't know where they're going to go yet. What number pick is round 20? Do
30,
some math.
300.
Yeah. So most of the guys are like past 300 is kind of where I've been focusing on what am I going to do in the reserve rounds. Like Kyle Bradish type pitchers are on my list there of I can see pretty clearly how they could be much better than the 300th pick. And if they're not, it doesn't really matter. But I don't really have a lot of exciting names because that's not the way I do things.
Yeah.
Like I really am going to take Charlie Blackmon for sure.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, let me ask you about a youngster because we talked about it off the air. Jordan Walker. And again, I was at that game on Saturday. He had two bombs. One, I kid you not, was out of the stadium. He's only 20. He's not guaranteed to play. He's not guaranteed to hit over 230. That's not your kind of guy. Sean loves him. We bid 16 for him and NL only and got him. Thoughts on Jordan Walker? Because he's just rising up the ADP boards right now.
Yeah, so it's definitely not my thing. Going back to the way I play is I want 14 hitters that are in my opening day lineup that are there at the end. I don't have to touch. Well, he's not that guy probably if he's not in the majors on opening day.
Right.
It doesn't do me any good if he comes up in the middle of May because then I have nothing for 6 weeks. I totally get playing that way. And it's interesting to me to see people who are just every bit as good at fantasy baseball as I am that play just the complete opposite way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like with the strategies, like either way can work.
Yeah.
It's just that's not what I do. Because going back to what I'm going to do in Fab, I'm not going to get someone good to fill his spot for 6 weeks or 2 months or whatever it is. And I'm not sure. I don't know what he's going to do when he plays. I'd rather just wait. I'm trying to find a pick number 230 and take Tristan Mikasas Sukasas, who I think has, if you just want a child for the sake of having a youngster who can do something, take a guy who's that far down that it doesn't really hurt you at all. And it's pretty easy to draft, Brandon Belt to fill in for him. Yeah. If it doesn't work out, of course, then you have Brandon Belt, but you see my point. Like I just can't do it with the early guys who I don't know that they're going to play.
Yeah.
because that doesn't work with the way I draft and the way I fab.
Right. Right. I do like this Jordan Walker kid. I mean, man, that guy impressed me. I saw him at the Arizona Fall League, and he's 6'6", like 240. Is like, holy cow, who is that guy? And so, not playing third base, he looks like an outfielder. The thing about the Cardinals is a lot of their guys are in the WBC, so he's going to play every day now in this spring. So he's going to get enough at bats, and if he stays hot, he should start. But if not, if they expose him, and Major League Pitching obviously can expose him, the top pitchers and stuff, we'll find out. But
Yeah. And I do think he'll play early-ish.
I do.
I mean,
Yeah.
even if they send him down, like he's the next guy up.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Or maybe Lars Nootbaar isn't as good as we all think he is.
We love the name for
right.
sure.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's just that his name is Nootbaar, and like I don't know. So it's not that I don't think Walker's going to be playing by probably mid-May, but I don't know that, and I don't know if he's going to be good.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. We're going to find out, though. So, Dave, I'm going to see you in 2 weeks in Las Vegas, which will be a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. We're going to get you up on the stage of champions on Saturday morning. We're going to bring everybody up there. That's right. So get in shape, because you have to run on up there like we did last year. But really looking forward to seeing you. Really looking forward to seeing everybody out there. Thanks for spending the time with me tonight, and best of luck in all your leagues this year. All right.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I will see you very soon.
All right, sounds good. In a half an hour, we've got a live stream. Tom and Derek are going to be doing a live stream tonight with Michael Govier from FTNFantasy.com. So tune back in for that one. And next week, I think I'm going to be talking with Ron Chandler. The two of us want to go down History Road here. We were talking this week in Florida. I thought, man, that'd be a lot of fun to spend some time with Ron. So
History Road is way better than Memory Lane. Well done.
Memory Lane. That's for old people.
History Road. I like
Ron
it.
Ron and I are going down to History Road, baby. All right. So sing a song for us, or get a tune for us down History Road for next week. All right.
Done.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you later, and good luck in all your NFBC leagues. Again, play NFBC.com.